Hello and welcome to another Debating Europe expert panel here in the European Parliament with me, Joe Lutobarsky. I'm the editor-in-chief of Debating Europe, and today we're going to be taking some of your questions and comments that you've sent us in on our platform, debatingeurope.eu, and putting them to a panel of experts, two of whom are here with me in the Parliament and two of whom are online. Let's go through our panel. I mean, today the topic is going to be how can we protect children from sexual abuse and exploitation online. We have with me in the European Parliament Antonio Labrador Jimenez, who's team leader in the fight against sexual abuse at the European Commission's DG Home. Welcome, Antonio.
Thank you, Joe. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good to have you. Also joining me is Almudena Lara, who's Child Safety Senior Manager at Google. Welcome.
Thank you, Joe. Very happy to be here.
Good to have you. And joining us online is going to be Denton Howard, who's Executive Director at InHope, which is a global network combating online child sexual abuse material. Denton, welcome.
Thank you very much, Joe. It's great to be with you.
Fantastic. It's good to hear you. And last but not least, we have Nina Varanen-Valkonen, who's Executive Director and Senior Specialist at Protect Children Finland. Nina, welcome.
Hello, Joe. Honored to be here.
Good, wonderful. Okay, so let's jump right in. We've got half an hour. We're going to get through as many questions and comments as we can. I'm going to group the first two comments together because I think they kind of are an interesting way to sort of frame the debate and kick things off. The first is sent in from Gabor. So Gabor says, I would compare the internet to a road network. It has sidewalks and pedestrian crossings, various bridges and all kinds of infrastructure to keep people, kids included, safe. But if you step down to the actual road, you will very likely be hit by a car. So the way that he's framing that to my mind, seems to be, you know, like a road network, we can design safety into the information superhighway. So that's, I think, one interesting way of conceptualizing the internet and some of the challenges. And a second one is from Julia, who also uses this idea of a road network. She says, I think it's time to teach cyber safety in schools too. Children are taught road safety and not to talk to strangers by policemen visiting and talking or by teachers. So I think something like this every few years with age-appropriate information is a good idea. So this is maybe a kind of more holistic, kind of whole-of-society approach that she's taking here. Both using the road network. Neither of them, by the way, mention, you know, there are other things in a road network that we have, like highway patrols, police, for example. There are speed limits. There are all sorts of things which they don't bring up. But let's talk about how we conceptualize the kind of the challenge and whether the focus should be maybe on technology as a solution or as kind of building up a kind of more whole of society holistic vision. Let's start with you. What do you think? What's your kind of feeling about when you hear these comments from Julia and from Gabor?
Thank you. I think both are very important ways of framing the conversation, and I really love the analogy of the road safety. I think it does work very well when trying to conceptualize how to ensure a safer experience for children online. And I think it's not either or. I think it is both of them that we need to look into. I think from an industry perspective, it is about how do we build safer experiences in the same way that you would do if you know that a road is particularly dangerous. You will look for ways in which to improve the safety of that road, and you will look from the start, and I think that that's where I think the Commission has been talking a lot about this, about safety by design, thinking about how do we design in a way that is going to be safer for our users, and in this case in particular for children to use. But I think that that needs to be complemented as well with many other measures. It needs to be a holistic approach. It needs to look in the same way that we teach children from an early age how to cross the road safely. We as adults also model how to cross the road safely. And adults also need to be taught about how to drive cars. And so kind of like taking that analogy, I think everybody in society has a role to play when it comes to keeping children safer. And at Google, we do build our products in taking into account the safety of our users and of children in particular. We also have programs and go to schools with the Be Internet Awesome program that teaches children about the basics of child safety and good behaviors online. And we also focus on the wider community, so the teachers and the parents, and how they can also be supported in this digital literacy journey. So I think it's both of them and many more other aspects of the road safety or the internet safety.
No, I'll go down the panel and I'll hear from everyone what they think. Denton, maybe I can come to you. So I suspect each of you may sort of also have this, it's both, it's not a choice. But I want to push the idea a little bit that there might be trade-offs and there might be a kind of choice to be made in terms of where do resources go. And I suppose, because this conversation is not just unique to this topic, it's something which I did a panel on privacy, I've done panels on hate speech moderation, and there is always this question of, is technology being put forward as a kind of silver bullet, and does it mean that maybe less attention is focused on the kind of real kind of whole of society, all of the different stakeholders which you've said. So perhaps the answer might actually be both. But Denton, let's bring you in. What do you think about this? What are your kind of opening thoughts?
Well, I'm delighted you mentioned the word magic bullet. Because it's the misnomer, because in reality there is no silver bullet for almost any issue, especially in regard to child sexual abuse and exploitation online. And you used the term earlier, the whole society solution. Well, I prefer the whole term. I prefer the idea of a 360-degree approach. It's like in Hope and Hotlines, we're involved in the detection and the removal of child abuse material and gathering intelligence and information for law enforcement, with the hope that victims will be identified, and we work with our industry partners and all that good stuff. But if you take it at a wider view, I mean, you've got issues where technology, obviously there's many technologies out there which will deliver things, but they on their own, I don't think, they're not going to solve the problem. They will curb it, and they can address many elements. There has to be regulation, and Antonio Labrador Jimenez is with you, and he's been championing legislation in this whole area, and that's hopefully going to deliver a lot of good results in the years to come. But then there's also, we need frameworks that industry and that law enforcement can work within, because there are certain restrictions that everybody has to obey. But all of those things, if we put together technology, all of those aspects, they all do great things. But if I could just zero in on one thing, Joe, and that's the concept of, and we use this word awareness, but it's about the awareness of the issue, first of all, and that goes from potential victims, children, from kindergarten to people who are 95 years of age, an awareness, and that it's not something that is taboo to be spoken about. Because abuse only happens in a situation where there are shadows. It doesn't happen in the open. And when a subject is openly talked about, both in society, in fora like this that we're talking now, or in schools, in an age-appropriate kind of way, I think that's the main way. If you can deprive the people who are predators or potential predators of their minimum opportunities, then I think that's the thing we can have the greatest impact. Now, I'm sure everybody will generally agree. People might disagree on details, but I don't think anybody would disagree with the point I've just made. But I could labour that point quite a while, Joe. But I think that's the point you addressed. In your introduction.
No, that's a fantastic point. Well made. Nina, what about you? Kind of to bring in your initial thoughts and how we should maybe conceptualize the challenge.
I think it's very helpful to compare the internet to physical roads and traffic, because it's so easy, especially for parents, to think about it as an environment and not just digital devices what the children use. In Protect Children, we have developed online road safety program, and we have the Stop, Slow, Go digital safety skills training and education starting already age 5. And we think it's of course technology, and that's there, and small children use it. So we need to start earlier the education and safety skill training. I think that we are talking about a situation that children really need more education and practice with online roads than like we teach them to normal school roads and traffic.
Yes.
So I think this is both complex problems needs collaborative solutions, I might say.
Yeah, okay. No, very, very well made. Antonio, what about yourself? What kind of are you thinking as you hear the rest of the panel kind of talk about how we should even begin to think about this issue?
I think the comparison that you have put forward at the beginning is very adequate. And in the Commission, when it comes to child safety, we make use of all the tools available to be helpful to EU citizens. In 2020, we published the EU strategy for a more effective fight against child sexual abuse that contain 8 concrete initiatives, both legislative and non-legislative, to make sure that children are safe from that particular danger of sexual abuse that is a danger both online and offline. In parallel, we also have the Better Internet for Kids strategy that makes sure, in particular, that the online aspect is well covered when it comes to awareness raising and educating parents. So going to the analogy you mentioned at the beginning, we need to make sure that the roads are built in a safe way, that the cars are built in a safe way. No one will accept today that when you go buy a car, it just breaks down at the first 100 kilometers. And so we need to do the same when it comes to rules to ensure that children are safe online as they are offline. The UN has confirmed that children's rights apply online as they do offline. Something quite intuitive, but the UN has confirmed that, and the European Commission is working very hard to ensure that there are rules online, because without rules, there is no safety, including child safety.
Okay, Almudena, maybe we can bring in, the next question here, which is from George. And George says, last time I checked, there is software for filtering only child-approved content, so it's up to the parents to ensure safe surfing on the web, and they already have the tools to do that. I think there's a lot of kind of assumptions packed into that, because for one thing, some of these tools can be quite complicated. It's not always, I mean, I have 2 young daughters, and I struggle to kind of set up filtering software. But if we talk about even the mindset that George is using here, which is that, okay, we have tools and technology which can filter, which can kind of scan. Maybe you could just tell us a little bit about what kind of technologies are we talking about? You know, what's out there in terms of detecting child sexual abuse material, how effective it is, and what kind of tools even are abusers using? You know, what's the kind of technology arms race on either side here?
I mean, there are so much to unpack there, so I'll try to cover a bit of the ground, and then we can open it up for the debate. I think going back to the roadmap analogy, I think parents need to be enabled as well to support their kids to be safe. So part of the technology is about parental control tools and allowing parents to set the digital ground rules for their family. So at Google, we have a family link that offers that opportunity for parents. We also have basic level protections that apply to all those that we know are under the age of 18. For example, and I think it is referred to in the question, if we know that a user is under the age of 18, we will turn Safe Search on by default. So Safe Search on means that when children are trying to look for pornographic content or very violent content on search, that content will not be available by default, and parents can set those constraints as well and those filters for their children. And then when it comes to preventing child sexual abuse and detecting this content, I think one of the points that is important to make is that technology has 2 big effects when it comes to child sexual abuse. One is, unfortunately, it allows abusers to abuse at scale, and it gives a scale to the abuse that was not known before. On the positive side, technology can also help to detect this type of behavior at scale. So we have across the industry, but I can speak for Google, we have hash matching technology that allows us to detect and remove content that has already been identified. And we also have machine learning classifiers that allow us to detect content that is likely to contain, new content that is likely to contain child sexual abuse, and then that can be reviewed and confirmed or otherwise by our human reviewers. So technology is there in all aspects of the safety journey of children, from the very beginning of supporting parents to set up the digital ground rules to the other end of the equation, which is about once abuse has happened and our services are being abused for either the production or the storage or the sharing of this content, technology is also there to help us detect this content and remove it.
Denton, maybe I could bring you in here. Maybe also bring in the next question, which is from Manos. So, I mean, we've been talking about conceptualizing this as a road network, and one of the things, of course, with a road network is there is an age at which you could get a driver's license, right? The technology is out of the hands of children. And so Manos brings this up. He says, do not let kids use the internet below the age of 10. By this age, the parents should have taught the children a lot about safety. So we've gotten, we've grown up with this technology. And Nina, I see your hand up as well. I'll bring you in right afterwards, I promise. But Denton, maybe you can kind of respond to what you've heard.
Well, from Nina, you're going to hear from the really professional, from the pedagogue and all that sort of thing. So I think so I'm going to give you quite a simplistic perspective on this, which is that when we talk about, like Manos's point about children under 10, well, that's not how the world works. And I don't know if Manos has any children, but I know certainly if I said to my kids, especially if they were under 10, going, you can't do that, or I'm putting a barrier in your way, the first thing they will do is they'll generally find a way to get around that barrier. So that's while the technology on its own may be okay, and those restrictions may be okay to say under 10, we all know that kids will always, it's human nature, we'll always find a way. But in terms of it's unrealistic. We are surrounded by the Internet of Things. It's pervasive. It's on phones, it's on screens, it's on tablets, it's on smart TVs. So the concept of keeping them away from the technology is unrealistic. It's about education. And I want to jump back to draw the analogy, because if we were talking about cars and the roads, I remember as kids when there was no seatbelts and everybody jumped in the car and nobody even thought twice, 7 kids in the back seat. And now in a million years, any kids of mine or any kids I know wouldn't even dream of getting into a car without putting the seatbelt on. And we need to have the same concept. The seatbelt has to be there in the first place. It has to work. And then also people have to use it. And it becomes ingrained in the muscle memory. And so that's where I think in terms of, we need all three. We need the behavior, we need the technology, and then we need a societal approach that there's laws in place that say you must wear your seatbelt, otherwise you will get a fine or you will be prosecuted or points on your license. But from the perspective of the psychological and pedagogical, I'll defer to Nina. She knows way more about it than me.
Let's bring in Nina. Particularly, Nina, what I'm interested in hearing is, technology is never staying still, so it's becoming more immersive, it's becoming more engaging. So what are your thoughts? How would you answer?
Well, I totally agree with Denton, of course, but I want to say, and especially for the parents, because I think the parents are the key, because they are there with their children 24 hours per day. So I think that they need to understand that if they keep their children not learning, like if we talk about traffic, keep your kid out of the traffic until she or he is 10. So what happens when he goes to traffic? He doesn't understand anything. He doesn't understand to be careful for the bikes, for the cars, for not understanding traffic lights. So I think it's very important that children learn from early on, because that way they can have knowledge and skills to cope with some things. But technology, it's not the key. I think the key is the social interaction. Parents, teachers, whoever interact with children, I think the technology is a bonus. But what comes on taking down the child sexual abuse images, I think then technology is the key. For example, Protect Children specialists work in Project Arachnet, led by the Canadian Centre for Child Protection, and our research, redirected research, clearly shows that offenders who view child sexual abuse images, they will contact children more after the use, and that's kind of academic research clearly shows that half of them will contact children in the open web. So technology is the key that we have to make that more efficient and more faster. Like we have analyzed over 1.1 million images and 800,000 notice and takedown requests, only us Protect Children. So I think that that is a preventive tool to take down the material as soon as possible.
Okay, Antonio, what are your kind of feelings on all this?
Well, technology plays a very important role, in particular when it comes to combating child sexual abuse. And the companies play a very important role in that. There are situations in which the companies are the only one that can save a child from ongoing abuse. Situations in which a child is too scared to tell the police. The parents and carers are not going to tell the police because they are, in many cases, the abusers themselves. So the only way to detect that abuse is when the companies use technology to detect the exchange of child sexual abuse images or videos, or when they detect an adult trying to approach a child for sexual purposes. So companies play a key role, and there are a few companies that are doing a lot, like Google. Some companies that are doing something, but many companies are not doing anything. That's why in May this year, the Commission published a proposal for a regulation to prevent and combat child sexual abuse, which first, it requires companies to use safety by design to make sure that they put in place these preventive measures to prevent the abuse from happening in the first place. So the focus of the proposal is on prevention, but prevention, unfortunately, is not enough always, or in some cases, and only for those cases, companies may receive a detection order by which they will be obliged to detect child sexual abuse material. I want to emphasize that technology is just part of the solution. There's a lot of work that needs to be done on prevention when it comes to dealing with offenders who feel sexually attracted to children, which estimates say that it's between 1% and 3% of the male population. Education as well, and the Commission is also doing a lot there. As I mentioned before, there's the EU strategy for a more effective fight against child sexual abuse that focuses a lot on prevention and make sure that technology is just one tool to combat these crimes, but not the only one. And I just want to say something else, going with the analogy of the road safety. These technologies are not able to understand the content of the message. So they will work as radars in a highway that are only able to detect if a car is going above 100 kilometers per hour, but are not able to tell who is in the car, what brand of car, etc. They can only answer the question whether that content is likely to be child sexual abuse material, yes or no, not what the content is about.
Can I ask you, how Google sees the kind of future of this? What kind of Google sees as the kind of upcoming challenges or possible kind of opportunities when it comes to what we've been talking about?
Yes, sure. If you don't mind, I'm going to go back. I agree with everything that has been said, but there is one point that I think was implicit in the previous question, which was about not allowing children to access technology until the age of 10. And I think there is something about like all of us around here are framing, are experts in the protection of child sexual abuse, and we look at technology with the view of danger and danger prevention and harm and risk. But it is also important to remember that for most children, technology is a real force for good, and they really benefit from accessing technology. So I don't want us to come out of here thinking that the right solution is to ban children from accessing technology, because you are also depriving them from a lot of benefits that come from being connected, accessing information, connecting with grandparents, etc. So I think that that's for me an important thing that we need to really keep in mind. And then you asked me about what's the future of technology and where technology will take us. I think Antonio was alluding to some of it. I think we need to develop technology that allow us to continue to detect and build on the existing technology to detect at scale in a way that actually respects the privacy of users. I think there is something about new vectors of risk for children. So for example, gaming or video streaming that actually are challenging, and we need to think about how technology can evolve. There is a big piece of work, I think, around grooming and how children can be prevented from being groomed or enticed to producing this material. And then there is, I think Nina was talking about it as well, the piece around the perpetrators, or Antonio was talking about it, but Nina works a lot in this space, about how can we actually work as well with that part of society that might be causing part of this problem by trying to create or entice children to producing more of this material and abusing children. And that is a very difficult area of work, but I'm very grateful that people like Nina really operate in this space, because I think that needs to really be addressed in the open as well.
Well, let's bring Nina in. Maybe you could talk a little bit about your work on this.
Yeah, we work. We use evidence-based holistic method. That means that we also need to work for offender-based prevention. That means that we need to find ways to prevent the crimes before it happens. So our redirection project is all about offender-based prevention. We need more research on who are looking for the child sexual abuse material. We have made a survey. We have now over 21,000 answers from those people who are looking for child sexual abuse material, and they have told about their behavior, their thoughts, their feelings, and we are now doing more research in analyzing what can be done for them to stop their behavior or change their behavior. It's not easy. We don't know if it's successful, but even to one offender to stop looking for child sexual abuse material, it's a major thing for victims of these images. And then, as we had now in Finland, one offender with 200 children victims. So I think that we need to, I always say it's like a river. If we just pick up and save children from the river, then it's absolutely, we can do that forever. But if we go upstream and look where the children are falling to the river, then we are making progress. We have this redirection research. It's in 21 languages, so we have the global data from offenders and potential offenders. And now we are doing more research. We don't know yet, but we know that 70% of these who answered our survey said they first saw very violent child sexual abuse material under 18. So we are talking about very young children, and I think we can define it as adverse childhood experience. And this is where we again need collaborative solutions to prevent children to see such a violent things, because it will have a negative effect on them. And 40% were under 13. So we have some shocking results as well from these who look for and use child sexual abuse material.
We're almost out of time, but Denton, maybe I can just bring you in to talk a little bit about, also, you know, we've been talking about the technology, we've talked a bit about offenders. Can you perhaps, can we also talk about victims and what can be done maybe to ensure that they become survivors and that they receive the support that they need to rebuild their lives? What would you say to that, Denton?
Well, I can say I had first-hand experience last week, no, week before last, where I spent quite a period of time with a victim and kind of touched on these kind of things. Well, the first thing that she said to me was that she doesn't want it to happen to anybody else. So first thing is we have to try and the prevention things, which we've already mentioned, and all of the good things and the road scenarios. But there's then the aspect of, well, the material that is out there, or the recordings of the victims, every time that material is reviewed, that victim is re-victimized again. And that content might have been recorded 30 years ago, but for more even. But that child is still being, even though they're a fully grown adult, they're still being re-victimized. So it's about the identification and removal of that content as rapidly as possible. And again, all of the technology things that Almudena referenced and the things that Antonio mentioned. So that serves the victims, but we also have to make sure that that's the current and the past, but we have to prevent the future. And again, as Nina mentioned about I call it offender interdiction. In other words, get ahead of the offender, try and get ahead of the offence. And how do you get to that? And Nina's mentioned her research. And there's also the Stop It Now program, which is, it comes in different names, but it's generally known as the Stop It Now activities, where they're trying to intervene to potential offenders before an offending event would happen. And all of those aspects, they all serve the rights of of victims. But then there are the victims who are currently in the process of being victims, but they need to be safeguarded. Now, I don't think any of us around this table, the virtual one, we can't jump out of a helicopter and kick a door in and do all the cool stuff. But we have to provide the information, the data, so that the people who can actually go in and rescue children, so that they can find them, that they can, first of all, identify them, find them, safeguard them, and then take the offender so they're out of a harmful situation. And then society will have to, and this is where services nationally have to be resourced properly, because these victims, they generally don't have any scars or cuts on the outside, but they are damaged individuals. I mean, this could not, literally, it's the scars on the inside, and they need to be helped. And that's a social thing that national governments, national health organizations, and many good NGOs in different countries try to address, but I think it needs to be given more. So I'll finish with that, Joe.
Thank you very much. No, that is, I think that in a way we've sort of come full circle, and we're again talking about the 360 approach, which you mentioned at the beginning, Denton. We're out of time. We could have gone on for longer, but I think this is a good place to leave it. So I'd like to thank my panel. Thank you also at home for watching this. We're going to make sure that we put links to the research and to the portals that have been mentioned on our website. So that'll be on debatingeurope.eu. And thank you again, and I hope to see you in a future panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.